This is MTG Burgeoning, and in this video we are going to update and upgrade our Kozilek the Great Distortion Colorless EDH deck. Thank you for joining us for another installment of the Up and Up series. Today we're updating and upgrading Kozilek the Great Distortion. In the description below this video, you'll see links to this build's deck tech, the deck list, as well as a link to this build's video primer series. We've got 4 cards going in and 4 cards coming out, and the first swap we're going to make is a land swap. The card going in, it is Throne of the High City. This is going to tap for a colorless mana, but we can pay 4 generic mana, tap it, and sacrifice it to become the Monarch. And if we're the Monarch, then at the beginning of our end step, we draw a card. And of course, if an opponent deals combat damage to us with any of their creatures, then they become the Monarch, and then we lose the Monarch. But I think with how strong this deck is, we don't have too much to worry about that. Plus, we have the strategy of sacrificing this whenever we want to make sure that we can get the Monarch and hold on to it. That screams card advantage. With Throne of the High City going into the 99, the land it's going to replace is Field of Ruin. Field of Ruin is a land that taps for a colorless mana, or we can pay 2 generic mana to sacrifice it to destroy target non-basic land an opponent controls. Then each player searches their library for a basic land and puts it onto the battlefield. No, we're not doing this anymore. We're not gifting free lands just to get rid of one nuisance land. We have other cards in this deck and cards that are going to be coming into this deck that will take care of that for us. No more free lands, no more helping out our opponents, and that means no more Field of Ruin. All right, the next card going in, we're going to get away from our lands and we're going to go to a non-creature spell, and that is a sorcery that's called Selective Obliteration. Here we have 3 generic and 2 colorless. Each player chooses a color, then exile each permanent unless it's colorless, or if it's only the color its controller chose. So let's dive into this a little bit. So this spell means that basically any multicolored card that's on the battlefield, as long as it's a creature, each permanent, any multicolored permanent that's on the battlefield when we cast this, upon resolution, it is getting exiled. Even if players picked blue, green, and red, and there is a teamer permanent on the battlefield, it's getting exiled. You're only keeping monocolor of what was chosen. All multicolored permanents are gone. That also means that for us, we lose absolutely nothing. So we're investing 5 mana to wither, maybe potentially cripple our opponent's sides of the battlefield, while we remain unchanged. Very, very powerful card that's going to be put into the 99 here. A very much needed removal spell. With 1 removal spell going into the 99, we need to take out a removal spell that wasn't quite up to par with what we were looking for. This comes on the back of a creature, and we needed to do a little bit of hoop jumping in order to activate this creature's, let's say, removal ability. So the card that's going to be replacing, Selective Obliteration is going to be replacing Steel Hellkite. Here we had an artifact creature dragon for 6 generic mana that flies, of course, with a 5/5 body. It has generic mana fire breathing, which means for every 2 we pay, it gets +1/+0 until end of turn. We could pay X to destroy each non-land permanent with converted mana cost X, whose controller was dealt combat damage by Steel Hellkite this turn. We can only activate this ability once each turn. So we had to swing in with the Steel Hellkite. Well, first we had to, invest the 6 mana, put it onto the battlefield. And outside of slapping on a Lightning Greaves to it, there it remained until it gets back to our next turn. Then we have to turn it sideways, send it into combat, hoping that it doesn't get destroyed as an artifact or destroyed as a creature, hoping that it doesn't get chumped down by maybe a flying fairy or something, or a spirit or something like that. So we have to send it into combat, we have to connect with it, and then we have to invest the mana to destroy non-land permanents with exactly X in its mana cost. So if an opponent has like a token army, we can pay 0 and wipe out their tokens. But that's a lot of hoops to jump through, and I have to be honest, the overall investment of mana, I think we're gonna get a bigger bang for our immediate buck with Selective Obliteration over Steel Hellkite. Steel Hellkite, at least for me, maybe you as a Kozilek or Colorless EDH fan, maybe Steel Hellkite has done better work for you, but for me it always seems to be just below average. It's a below average performer for me, and I'm honestly much more excited about the potential of Selective Obliteration than keeping Steel Hellkite flying around in the 99. All right, we're halfway through. Card number 3 going in. It is Eldritch Immunity. For 1 colorless mana, target creature we control gains protection from each color until end of turn. Oh, but we're not done yet. That lovely 1 word under there of Overload, 4 generic mana and 1 colorless mana, that means that we swap out target with each creature. I'm sorry, you swap out the word target and put in the word each. And then if we pay the overload cost, it's each creature we control gains protection from each color until end of turn. Please note, because we should not overlook the fact that this is an instant. This is not a sorcery. This is not like the red overload spell that destroys all of the artifacts that you don't control. Of course, when you want to think of the name of the card, you can't remember. It's 1 red and then it's 4 in a red. Overload. Of course, I'll remember it once the video ends. But anyways, this is an instant. So this will grant all of our creatures protection from things like Blasphemous Act. Yeah, that's going to happen. And the fact that we can cast this at any time, we could just play it safe and cast it during our turn to send our creatures into near perfect, unblockable combat. Or we can use this to bail our creatures out if somebody's trying to get rid of them with some burn spell or something like that. What a wonderful card to add into a colorless deck. With Eldritch Immunity going in, the card that's coming out is Whisper Silk Cloak. Here we have an equipment for 3 generic mana, and the equip cost is 2, so we're investing 5 mana into this equipment, and equipped creature is unblockable and has Shroud. So, way back at the beginning of building this deck's inception, this was meant to slap onto Kozilek in order to deliver eventual victory through commander damage. It already has Menace, but making it unblockable would mean, guess what? You're taking at least 12, and if we have the if we have the Eldrazi Conscription on Kozilek before we slap the Whisper Silk Cloak on, well, then it's GG. But what's happening is now that we're getting such a large burgeoning of wonderful, powerful, colorless cards like you've already seen here with Selective Obliteration and Eldritch Immunity, these cards that keep being developed are making cards like Whisper Silk Cloak getting pushed further and further down the totem pole to the point where we are right here, and it's just not viable. This is not a viable card for us right now because we don't need to worry about winning through commander damage with Kozilek. It's nice to have that as an option, and with its Menace, we still do, but with Eldritch Immunity, not only can we give Kozilek protection from all colors, we can also give it to all of our creatures. So swapping out a Whisper Silk Cloak for an Eldritch Immunity, which, let's face it, we can consider the Eldritch Immunity to be a win condition card, Whisper Silk Cloak, it's a little slow. 5 total mana for both cards. We're going to win the game, most likely, if we cast Eldritch Immunity during our turn. Whisper Silk Cloak, we need more time. All right, now we're up to the very last change for this video today. Card number 4 going in. We're putting in a new creature into the 99. That means a creature card is coming out to make room for it. That creature that's going in, it is the Glaring Fleshraker. Here we have a 2 generic and 1 colorless Eldrazi drone with a 2/2 body. And whenever we cast a colorless spell, which in this deck will be every spell, we create a 0/1 colorless Eldrazi spawn creature token with sacrifice this creature, add 1 colorless mana. And that's every single time we cast a colorless spell. This is almost the same as making all of our spells one generic or one colorless mana less to cast, because we can just use the body of that Eldrazi spawn to cast the next thing. Even better. This is even better, and this is only an uncommon. This is what boggles the mind, especially in a deck like this. Whenever another colorless creature enters the battlefield under our control, Glaring Fleshraker deals 1 damage to each opponent. We can actually consider this card to be a potential game-winning card. This is a win condition in this deck, because we have every single spell is a colorless spell. And every time we cast a spell, we're going to deal 1 point of damage to each opponent from the Eldrazi spawn that's created when it enters the battlefield. And if it's another creature that comes into play, that's just going to be another 1 point of damage that the Glaring Fleshraker is going to deal. This is only an uncommon, but this is instantly one of the most powerful finishers in this deck. You watch. This is going to do so much peripheral work through its asymmetrical damage dealing. It's going to be a game winner, particularly because of the body that comes into play can be used to help cast the next round of spells. I am still surprised that that's just an uncommon. With Glaring Fleshraker going into the 99, coming out is going to be the Abstruse Archaic. All right, so here we have an avatar for 3/4, 4 generic mana, has Vigilance. We can pay a generic mana and tap it to copy target activated or triggered ability we control from a colorless source, which for us will be all of them, and then we may choose new targets for the copy. So this is our plan. This is what we're thinking here. We have other ways, and in the future of this series, we will include other ways to copy these abilities. Outside of an equipment like Lightning Greaves being attached to Abstruse Archaic, this is the waiting game. This is Steel Hellkite all over again. We're investing 4 mana for a 3/4 to sit there, and then we wait till our next turn, cast something, then pay the 1 generic mana and tap it to copy the activated or triggered ability. No, not anymore. Like I said, we already have ways to do that, and we're going to put more ways to do that in the future. I want the Glaring Fleshraker at a reduced mana cost that extends our board with the bodies that it creates and helps to bring all of our opponent's life totals down every single time we cast a spell. Remember, every spell we cast in this deck is colorless, and it's going to trigger the Glaring Fleshraker every single time. I'll take that swap every day of the week and twice on Friday Night Magic. But you tell me, MTGBC, are these the right choices? Let me know in the comments section below. This is MTG Burgeoning, your channel for all things magic.